Small Washington city got national attention because their city council voted 4-3 that they were not going to raise the pride flag over City Hall. That happened at the beginning of June. The mayor at the time said, look, we already have a flag that represents everyone.
So if we start raising flags, we got to raise everybody. How we want a Hamas flag flying over, the city of Newcastle, or MAGA flag? How about a Trump flag or an Antifa flag? We're not going there, folks. Not while I'm the mayor. I'm sorry. So this is already an inclusive city with an inclusive flag that flies 24/7 over our city. We include everybody. We're not going to exclude somebody, and we're not going to say, well, this group is better than that group, so they get a flag or they get a day. Everybody is equally represented by the American flag every single day.
Yeah, and so that's Mayor Robert Clark. So he said that, and then, the mob came out of the woodwork. And the mob of people that's like, love everyone, inclusion, like good vibes and love and feelings, of course, got vitriolic. We saw some of that. There was a meeting this week where there was going to be another vote because of how many people were emailing and saying, no, we want you to raise the pride flag. They had some sort of impromptu kind of mini demonstration outside where people were blocking a pastor from moving around. Some guy was cursing out Jonathan Cho. So yeah, all full of love and inclusion or whatever it is. So anyway, one of the council members who happens to be the deputy mayor flipped her vote this week. So they have now raised the pride flag over Newcastle City Hall. Fine. Weird. I already said my piece about that yesterday. But what we hadn't talked about yesterday is now a new angle of attack on Mayor Robert Clark that the media has taken up. In fact, there was an article in the Seattle Times about it. I'll talk about it in a moment. But so he gave a longer speech as part of this vote this week to reverse course. It was like 15 minutes. And I loved a lot of it. I was like, wow, he is spitting absolute truths and bringing all the receipts. And one of the points he was making is he was talking about some of the people in the room who were there in favor of raising the pride flag, including a citizen who runs a Newcastle community Facebook page. And he's calling people out by name. He's saying, you're here to talk about, love and acceptance, yet here's what you're posting on social media. Like straight hatred toward white people, toward the mayor, absolute vitriol. So this mayor is name by name, naming and shaming citizens and even his fellow council members for saying hateful things about, who are sitting right next to him while he's calling him out, who are saying hateful things about him on social media. So here's a clip.
These council members, they don't know what's in my heart. They don't know what we're talking about. They don't have any clue. It's all made up stuff. Right? To sow dissension. There is dissension in our community, folks, and I'm sorry to be angry and brusque, right? But the true division is the people who lecture you about being kind and then do the exact opposite.
100%. And we say that all the time. It's like you have these people who preach inclusivity, yet not if you disagree with me politically. Not if you're not hook, line, and sinker for everything I believe, then I'll be hateful and vitriolic to you. And we see that on the right, too. I mean, I just said yesterday the threats I'm getting from semi-bird supporters that they're going to turn me into cat food. It's like, okay, calm down, calm down. So this tirade was, I'll call it a tirade, because he was clearly very frustrated, right? But he ended up bringing up stuff outside the realm of Pride Month. He also brought up the issue of reparations. And this meeting was happening on the eve of Juneteenth. So, oh my gosh, you can't do that. So I know there was a radio host this morning who was ranting about how basically this mayor is racist because he talked about reparations. And I'm thinking, gosh, what did he say, right? Because the Seattle Times also did an article on eve of Juneteenth. Newcastle mayor disparaged reparations and pride. Interesting. So the Seattle Times is saying he disparaged reparations and pride. That was interesting to me because I didn't ever hear the mayor disparage pride. He just basically said we already have an inclusive symbol in the pride flag, right? And I thought he disparaged reparations. What does that mean? So here is the clip from his speech where he talks about reparations.
I'm a veteran. There's a lot of veterans. The American flag is very special to me, right? It was paid for by the blood of people, men and women, over the centuries that gave us the rights we have now. I recognize that no person, group, or country is without sin or flaw. These flaws or sins have historically led to bad outcomes, marginalizations, and so on. But you've got to ask yourself, at what point do you just continue to hold on to these, or do you let go and move forward? You're going to hold on to something forever? You're supposed to take your history and learn from it and correct the grievances and the marginalizations or anything that you felt was an issue. 160 years ago, the Civil War ended, and California just established a committee to study reparations. California was a free state with no slaves, and nobody's a slave there today, but they can't let go. And it causes division and hate and creates victim groups because people are focused on what divides us and what instead of what unites us. How long do we hold on to grievances? A couple years, a couple decades, a couple centuries? You want to pass down to your great-great-grandkids that, hey, one day, I was called a bad name, 200 years ago, so don't forget, man, be a victim, right? That's where we're at, right? I reject that totally. Totally reject that. Now, we know what's going to happen when we have this vote, right? It's going to reverse what happened 2 weeks ago. Okay, but that's democracy.
I love every second of that. That's not disparaging. How is that disparaging reparations? Like the Times says, first of all, we should disparage reparations. Reparations, unless they are targeted specifically to people who actually had stuff taken from them by the government or were prevented from home ownership, who can prove that case, reparations make no sense. Some of the laws that we've seen across the country. So why would it matter if he disparages reparations? He's not disparaging black people, and he clearly wasn't disparaging what black people went through in this country. He talked about the ills of our society, more than 100 years ago. So he's acknowledging all of that. And, also to the Seattle Times for that headline, on eve of Juneteenth, Newcastle mayor disparaged reparations and pride. He never disparaged pride. In fact, here's a clip of him doing the exact opposite.
To all of you in the pride movement, you're very welcome in our city, but be very careful of the hate that's in your midst, right? It's not coming from outside, it's coming from within. And that's unfortunate. Reject it. Don't let hate and what you see on social media define and distract you from what you believe in. That goes for anybody.
So somehow the Seattle Times saw that and turned it into the Newcastle mayor disparaged pride? No, he literally said, and he said 2 weeks ago, everyone's welcome. This is a very inclusive and welcoming community, and the most inclusive and welcoming symbol we have is the American flag. He never disparaged pride. Shame on the Seattle Times. Truly, you owe him an apology, and you owe him a retraction. Just because he didn't hook, line, and sinker kowtow to the pride people who want the flag hoisted above City Hall, he has a legitimate argument to make. And when he says there, when you are pride and all about love, you have to show it. And they weren't showing it on social media. They weren't showing it in comments and emails to him. He read some of them into the record in front of the people who said those things. He has a legitimate point that he made point by point by point. Now, the Seattle Times, it's not your job to disagree with him, right? Right? It's not your job to disagree with him. You can lift up what he said, but when you run an article saying on eve of Juneteenth, Newcastle mayor disparaged reparations and pride, you're putting your personal beliefs and bias into the equation and pushing it onto him. You owe him an apology. I will also say, I have seen a couple of you in the chat say, Brandi, you got to get him on. Already ahead of you, ask and you shall deliver. Coming up on Sundays with subscribers this week, we will be joined by the mayor of Newcastle, Robert Clark, who is going to join us to talk about all of this, what he went through, and what the Seattle Times wrote about him here. So if you have not become a subscriber already, you can do that by signing up, undividedpod.com, undividedpod.com.